Colleagues, my name is Lucy Slack. I'm the Deputy Secretary General of the Commonwealth Local Government Forum, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to this webinar today, this morning, in some parts of the world where people are joining, but I think this morning for most colleagues who are joining us in the Caribbean. We're very, very happy to have you with us. This event is one of a series of 3 events on local economic development as a driver of trade in the Commonwealth. We've run a similar webinar in both Asia and Africa, and we're delighted now to be holding this event in the Caribbean, an opportunity for us to hear from an august panel who we'll be introducing shortly, but also very importantly, an opportunity for us to hear from you. We hope this will be a very participatory session, and we encourage you to actively use the Q&A at the bottom of your screen to feed in any questions or comments that you'd like to make as the discussion goes on. Maybe I should just say a little bit about CLGF. For those of you who are not aware, the Commonwealth Local Government Forum is the Commonwealth organisation which represents local governments, city governments, local government associations, and ministries with responsibility for local government across the 54 member states of the Commonwealth. And our work focuses around local democracy, good governance, and really building capacity at the local level in order to improve delivery to citizens on the ground. And local economic development is a major part of our work, really thinking about local economic development as an entry point to delivering the Sustainable Development Goals, but also as a way for local government to really use its convening power to support economic development in its area. And I think the recent COVID crisis has really kind of brought home to all of us how important that sustainable local economic development really is. So we're thoroughly looking forward to this session and to taking this whole process forward. We've circulated already a paper which has been authored for us by our facilitator today, Vijay Krishnarayan, around local economic development as a driver for trade in the Commonwealth, really trying to draw on the experiences from across the Commonwealth, different countries in the Commonwealth, different contexts of local economic development. And I'm going to leave it really for him to introduce in full his paper. But we really want this workshop, this webinar, to be an opportunity for us to really discuss the role of local economic development, the role of local government in local economic development, how local economic development can really start to strengthen those local value chains and support the trade agenda, and whether there are opportunities for local government to feed in more strategically into some of those economic development and trade discussions at a national level, and what some of the mechanisms are for doing that. I did indicate, we should indicate just briefly that this session will be recorded so that we can keep a record of the discussion and we can capture all of the contributions that you make. So perhaps without further ado, because I know you haven't joined this webinar to listen to me, you've joined this webinar to listen to our colleagues and to participate. I'm very honoured to be able to introduce our first speaker, our keynote speaker, Honourable Desmond McKenzie, who is the Minister of Local Government in Jamaica, but he is also a long-time local government practitioner, a former councillor, but also a former mayor of Kingston City Council from, I think, if I'm correct, 2003 until 2010. So somebody who really brings to the table experience in a way from both sides of the debate that we're trying to have today. So Minister, without further ado, allow me to hand over to you. Honourable Minister.
Thank you so much, and thanks for the introduction. And let me, first of all, on behalf of the government and people, extend our appreciation for this invitation to participate in this very timely event that seeks to bring our neighbors and friends across the world using the means of technology. Our conversation today is of great relevance and strategic importance in its own right. It is even of great importance when we look at our current global economic circumstances, and when we consider the social and economic effects of COVID-19, COVID-19 is not just a matter of mere record around the world. They are being felt in cities and towns and communities everywhere. We notice that there are no country that is spared the wrath of COVID-19. We have grown accustomed to the local economic development, and it's being spoken about in many areas, especially here in Jamaica, as a cornerstone of economic expansion and resilience, especially at the parochial level. However, lead will now be a critical instrument in the recovery of communities and municipalities and national life. A fundamental component of the stability and success of lead is continually created by political consciousness. In the case of Jamaica, the implementation of the program has been carried on across successive governments over the last couple of years, thus allowing its development and expansion to meet the needs of the people in the local space. This cannot be overemphasized, especially in relative comparison to us as a young democracy, such as many within our regions who are not yet fully developed and is still yet not even half a century old in terms of our democracy and our independence. Our country's reliance with a wide range of international partners, including the Government of Canada through the Caribbean Local Economic Development Project, evolves in the Local Economic Development Support Program. The Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development has responsibility for this program, and it is administered primarily through the agency known as the Social Development Commission, which is the major community development and research arm in the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. In this way, an important and successful relationship exists between central government and local government, and where the latter is represented at the cabinet level. Additionally, the SDC works with a wide range of partners, including the local authorities who have legally established jurisdiction over areas of responsibilities. We recognize the significant levels of investment in supporting structures of the LEDSP program, which are critical to its ability to create new young entrepreneurs across the country, who in turn will contribute strongly to the domestic and export market, as is the case in many developed countries. The bulk of the economic activities supported by LED is in the goods producing sector. This government has since 2016 heavily expanded investment in local government and in the Social Development Commission, so it can spearhead the growth of a local economic development support program. Additionally, in the budget, we are committing $500 million Jamaican dollars to local initiatives in this new term of the administration, which commenced in September of this year. We have seen significant gains and successes using the program in the last 4 years. And that is why our commitment to improve the program by providing these funds comes at a very, very critical time. We have achieved significant success as a result of the investment in training new entrepreneurial class at the local level. Over 1 billion Jamaican dollars was spent over the last 4 years to develop structural environment in which local entrepreneurs can develop. These include direct training through business fairs, business model creation, and project proposal development. In other words, we have been engaging at the local level in converting our citizens into business people. They, in turn, have helped to create over 5,000 new jobs, with the majority of these jobs are now full-time employment. What started out as part-time employment has now become full-time employment. As a result of these important advances under this initiative, there is now a foundation for recovery from the ravages of COVID-19. There is much more to be done, especially in the recovery phase of this pandemic. However, I can confidently say that due to the government of Jamaica's strategic approach to local economic development, our people have responded and are responding to the call not just to seek jobs, but to create jobs, be their own bosses, and experience the prosperity that we promised from 2016. We continue to work towards achieving sustainable development goals, fully aware that the total involvement at every level of the society is the key to success. We continue to strengthen our local representatives at the municipal council, to expose them to the kind of training that they have never been exposed before. Not only training for those officers, but training also for the political directorate who drives the policies and on whose initiative we all work. The government of Jamaica fully endorses and supports this venture and continue to be a proud participants in what we can only consider a real parochial program that reaches the heart of the Jamaican young people. I thank you.
Honourable Minister, thank you very much for that. And I think thank you for your commitment and your ongoing commitment to local economic development. And I think particularly recognising that strong foundation of small business. And I think that that's something, Vijay, that you will come on to a little bit in your contribution. So colleagues, without further ado, allow me to hand over to our facilitator and the author of the paper that you've all received, Vijay Krishnarayan. Vijay, welcome.
Thank you very much, Lucy, and thank you, Minister, for that quite comprehensive tour of the table, setting out the issues that we're going to cover in the time ahead of us. My job, colleagues, is to take us through 3 parts of our agenda today. And it's a P, a P, and a P. The first P is to take you through the paper. The second P is to introduce and curate a discussion by introducing our panelists. And the third P relates to your engagement. This is more than a chalk and talk, as we might say. This is an opportunity to engage with you. So we're looking for your participation in the session. So to start with then, the first P, let me take you through the paper. And thank you, Xavi, for taking us through these slides. I believe the paper has been placed in the chat. I know it's been circulated previously. What I'll do is summarize the paper. I've got 7 slides that capture really the main points, and I hope they'll trigger some thoughts with you. Could I have the first slide, please, Xavi? This paper really takes stock of the Commonwealth Local Government Forum's work over a 10-year period. There's a considerable body of work that's been compiled and collated by CLGF. And it comes at a very timely moment, as the Minister has said. It comes at a time when we're re-evaluating globalization as a concept. And that re-evaluation is taking place in a number of places. It's taking place on the street corners, as well as in the policy-making and decision-making rooms. There's quite a broad-ranging, comprehensive re-evaluation of globalization. I think the second component of the current context speaks to the recognition of the opportunities afforded by technology, the opportunity for technology to disrupt value chains in a positive way, an opportunity to bring the places where value is realized much closer to the location where people that are producing goods and services are located. So technology is providing opportunities to realize and insert local stakeholders in particular in value chains. And the third point, I think, as the Minister highlighted in his introduction, this discussion on local economic development and its connection with trade comes at a time when we begin to plan for a post-COVID world, as we begin to ask ourselves whether what comes next should be what went before, whether this not provides an opportunity for us to look ahead and plan in ways that actually deliver economic benefits at the local level. This paper argues that if the potential of local economic development is going to bring home the benefits of trade, then our strategies need to address several points. They need to address the coherence of policies and institutions working at the local, the regional, and the national and international levels. You can't have policy at a local level going in one direction and policy at a national level going in another. Further, as the Minister said, it's important that local and national stakeholders, local and national institutions are pulling in the same direction. The strategies that think about and deliver local economic development need to understand value chains and work and target ways in which those value chains can be opened up so that local stakeholders can participate in them, so that value can be realized closer to where producers are situated. The two particular focal points for the paper surround small enterprises and cities. Micro, small and medium-sized enterprises, or MSMEs as I shall refer to them throughout, are a particular feature of Commonwealth Caribbean economies, and they are especially important when we think about inclusion and participation in economic activity, particularly when it comes to women's involvement and the engagement of young people. Cities are also important. Without overlooking the importance of rural development, cities provide an essential focal point. This is where value is realized in value chains. And it's important that we factor them into our thinking on local economic development. And the next slide. So the current context is a patchwork of threats and opportunities. What is, having assessed some of those contexts, I want to focus a little bit in this slide on the potential of the Commonwealth to act as an agent of change in shaping policy on this connection between local economic development and trade. The Commonwealth's engagement to date has focused on advocating for institutional arrangements that are fair, that allow equitable access across the globe. If you look at some of the publications that the Commonwealth Secretariat has authored on, I can highly commend these to you, the trade hot topics and the annual reviews on the state of trade, you'll see the emphasis on the importance of developing capacity so that member states can participate in the institutional arrangements that govern trade. The second aspect of the Commonwealth's potential in this field is in using the ministerial forums and deploying the Commonwealth's convening power. And Lucy made reference to the moment that's provided next year when Commonwealth heads meet. There's also, I think, an increased willingness on the part of the Commonwealth to make use of its various moving parts. The Commonwealth is not one organisation. Rather, it's an amalgam of institutions, agencies, the Commonwealth Secretariat, the Commonwealth Local Government Forum, the Commonwealth Investment and Enterprise Council, Commonwealth Business Women's Network, the Commonwealth Foundation. These various organisations come together and together can work with their specific constituencies to ensure that the levers are pulled in favour of inclusive development. The next slide, please, Xavi. The Commonwealth Local Government Forum, as I said, it's standing on firm ground in its work on trade, and its point of departure is the 2005 Aberdeen Agenda, which was incorporated into the Commonwealth Charter when that was signed off by Commonwealth governments in 2013. And the Aberdeen Agenda is the Commonwealth's definitive statement on the importance of democracy and institutions. The Commonwealth Local Government Forum's LED discourse is shaped by its members, as everything that the CLGF does. It's rooted in CLGF's focus on developmental local government. And it recognises that local institutions are essential in delivering on development. And this means making sure that we're going beyond the kind of statutory minimum, the basic mandates that have been ascribed to local government, being more expansive in our view of what local government can bring to the table when it comes to development. Local government has an essential role in coordinating and strengthening multiple stakeholders. Next slide, please, Xavi. As we talk about development frameworks, we remind ourselves that we're entering the decade of delivery on Agenda 2030. When we look to locate the connection between local economic development and trade in the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, we acknowledge, of course, that local government is a well-established part of the Sustainable Development Goal agenda. It features in SDG 6 on water and sanitation, in SDG 8 on economic development and jobs, on SDG 9 on infrastructure, on SDG 11 in regard to urbanisation, and SDG 16, which talks about the importance of governance and institutions. On the plus side, the SDG agendas remind us of the importance of building resilience as a development strategy. And we can locate the localisation of trade opportunities in that context. But if you were to be critical of the SDG agenda and what it says about trade, you can say, I think legitimately, that trade is an outlier in the SDG agenda. It's buried slightly within SDG 17. You have to look a little hard to find it. And even when it is mentioned, the focus is on trade liberalisation rather than enabling the broadest range of stakeholders to participate. So it's a little at odds with a narrative of leaving no one behind. Whatever the frame that you use to locate local economic development, I think it's important to remind ourselves that global, regional, even national development frameworks are not panaceas. They need to be tailored to the context, even within regions. So what applies, for example, in Guyana and Belize might not apply in Antigua and Barbuda. So that's the next slide. A little bit on cities. So we know, I've said that cities are important focal points that warrant particular attention, because this is where value is added. And I'm not just talking about our principal cities, but there are other towns in our countries that house and provide the arena where value is added. But if the potential of those cities and those towns is to be realized, the paper finds that the capacity of key individuals, key agencies within those administrations need to be strengthened so that they're able to engage with trade and bring home the benefits to their particular municipalities. And I'm not just talking about delivering on training, but a comprehensive audit of the capacities that are required, ranging from raising basic awareness of trade regimes and the opportunities that apply, to assessing the networks and the way in which towns and cities interrelate with national, regional, and international processes. There's also a need to look beyond the basic mandates. We all know the essential mandates related to cities. Of course, they relate to refuse collection, for example, or providing basic transport infrastructure. That's a starting point for a discussion on the role of local authorities in relation to enabling a connection between local economic development and trade, but it shouldn't be the last word. It's a point of departure for a more liberal interpretation of what local authorities and municipalities can bring to local economic development. Next slide, please, Terry. I mentioned the importance of MSMEs. These, as I said, are the mainstays of many Commonwealth Caribbean economies. And we need to map the ways in which MSMEs engage with value chains. Where are they actually having success in making inroads into value chains, and where are the barriers? And that means mapping value chains, both nationally and internationally, to see where the opportunities might lie. In doing so, and thinking about the role of towns and city administrations in enabling local participation, we need also to think about the attitudes of our administrations towards micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. The paper finds that in many instances, the relationship between administrations and the entrepreneurial sector can be a little tense. In some instances, with micro enterprises in particular being seen as a nuisance or a pest, posing some kind of either environmental risk or safety hazard that needs to be managed and regulated, rather than coming at it from the other way of regulating so that better conditions are created, more value is realized. Last slide, please. The conclusion is that local economic development is an idea that's time has come. Again, we've seen this happen before, but this time, given the particular context and the timing of the discussion on a post-COVID recovery in particular, this is an idea that's time has come. But it does need to be contextualized to the particular circumstances of the location. We do need a little bit of proof of concept here. A lot of the writing, a lot of the theory on local economic development comes from either North America or Western Europe. We need more evidence that local economic development can actually deliver on a global South stage. The Commonwealth has convening power, and this can be deployed in favour of cities and micro, small and medium-sized enterprises as agents of local economic development. Agents of local economic development that connect with trade and can deliver benefits for all. So, colleagues, that is the presentation of the paper. What I want to do now is to move to the panelists, the second of my 3 Ps for this particular session. And I want to start by saying that we have a good spread of perspective, from local government official to parastatal perspective, encouraging and nurturing investment in particular sectors, to ministerial responsibilities, view from the central government, looking at ways in which central and local can connect and the importance of strategy. I want to start by asking Jumani Robinson, the Director of Planning at St. Thomas Municipal Corporation in Jamaica, to reflect on the local economic development work that's being done in St. Thomas and the ways in which strategy on LED is being integrated at a local level, with particular regard to the micro, small and medium-sized enterprise sector. Jumani, you've got 7 minutes. I'll give you a warning when you've got 1 minute to go. Thank you.
Good morning.
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 Yeah, let me acknowledge the presence of our Honorable Minister Desmond Mackenzie, Ms. Lucy Slack, Deputy Secretary General at CLGF, Facilitator, Mr. VJ Krishna Ryan, and my other panelists. My name is Jumani Robinson, Director of Planning of St. Thomas Municipal Corporation, and also a member of the St. Thomas Sustainable Development Planning Unit. And I'm here to present the LED work done in St. Thomas and how it is being integrated in our St. Thomas Sustainable Development Plan. So in July 2018, the Municipal Corporation trained 35 community members in small business development, which included developing their individual businesses and market plans. The training provided possible and potential source of funding for their businesses. The training was made possible with funding from CLGF through ALGA-J, which is Association of Local Government of Jamaica. The main objective was to assist the St. Thomas Municipal Corporation to successfully complete a local economic development community training program as part of the economic development component of the St. Thomas Sustainable Development Plan. The LED played a pivotal role in achieving two of the main pillars of St. Thomas Sustainable Development Plan, which are governance and economic development. This was solidified with alignment to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, Goals 5, Goal 8, Goal 11, and also Goal 17. This was also aligned with the Jamaica National Development Goals. Goals 1, Jamaicans are empowered to achieve their full potential. Goals 3, Jamaica's economy is prosperous. Our vision for LED is to ensure that St. Thomas will grow and diversify by capitalizing creatively on the economic opportunities that will emerge, its commitment to sustainable development for the advancement of existing industries and the establishment of new industries that will work harmoniously with the built and natural environment. Presently, the Municipal Corporation is providing small grants to 6 of the 35 participants of the LED training. The 6 comprise of 3 catering service, 1 apiculture with emphasis on byproducts of honey, dressmaking business, and package and sales of spice business. They were selected after completing their business plans and their business proposal, and based on analysis done by the St. Thomas Sustainable Development Unit, were considered to be most viable. Going forward, the Municipal Corporation has approved funding for what will be called community development grants, which will be targeting MSMEs in various communities across the parish. The Municipal Corporation will also continue to support MSMEs by channeling MSMEs to financial institutions where they can access low interest loans, create a business incubator to harness entrepreneurial initiatives, work with central government agency responsible for business development, and export to help these MMSEs to establish or support these businesses. Renovation of the Morant Bay Market and the Morant Bay Arcade. Morant Bay is the capital of St. Thomas. Increase in tourist development in areas of heritage and ecotourism with special emphasis on community-based tourism. Now, the lead will play a central role in post-COVID-19 economic reconstruction in St. Thomas by what we have done so far is evaluating the impacts of COVID-19 on small businesses through surveys, which are done by SDC, which is the Social Development Commission, create a central online repository for resource and information, infrastructural development, which includes building and maintaining parochial roads and bridges with an effort to improve access within the parish. There should be continued interaction with and among the local communities in order to develop appropriate responses to their livelihood. Build capacity of community through training. Incorporate a local economic development strategic action plan in the Sustainable Development Plan. Create and provide dedicated funding for MSMEs initiative in local communities, which was made mention of the community development grants. And in final, for sustainable development to be successful, the local knowledge system in the communities must be recognized and harnessed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I'm going to now pass on to Mr. Hiro Balani, who is the manager of investment generation Beltrade in Belize. Beltrade is a parastatal agency based in the Ministry of Economic Development and has a focus on stimulating both domestic and international investment in specific sectors. Hiro, please.
Good morning. Thank you, Vijay. And again, protocol having been established, I just want to again acknowledge the presence of CLGF and thank you for the invitation again, as well as Honorable Minister from Jamaica, and of course, Vijay for the paper as well. Very insightful. So again, good morning. My name is Hiro Balani, and I will really be presenting on some of the work that Beltrade has been doing as introduced by Dr. Krishna Ryan. And basically, one of the key things is that Beltrade is, while it is a statutory body under the government of Belize, I really like to look at it as an economic development agency at the national level that has to work at the local level. So I think a key part of today's dialogue looks at moving in the same direction, both nationally and locally. So the Belize Trade and Investment Development Service, or Beltrade for short, our mission is to enhance Belize's prosperity, to foster investor confidence, entrepreneurship, business growth, and innovation. And there are 4 technical units under Beltrade. The first is Belize Invest, which is the key focus of our unit, is to stimulate both local and foreign direct investment. And then we have our Belize Training and Employment Center, which looks at training the local talent to meet investment demands. We also have an Export Belize unit that works in export development and trade promotion. And then we have a Small Business Development Center, which is our SBDC. And the SBDC Belize has really been doing a great job in stimulating local MSME development. So those are some of the 4 units and the 4 key mandates of Beltrade. Now, a key part of the discussion as well is COVID-19. And I think it has definitely shown us how we, both at the national and local level, need to work much more together in order to stimulate economic goals and also to meet national indicators. And so what we have done in April of this year is, as mentioned by Jermaine in St. Thomas, is looking at surveying the private sector to look at their economic impacts from COVID-19. And in that area, we had launched a national MSME survey, and I wanted to start off there before I jump into some of the more practical projects that we've done with the CLGF. Now, in the survey, we had a total of 158 MSMEs that participated in Belize. And really the key affected sectors were tourism and agriculture. But from that, micro enterprises were most affected, which is another key aspect when we talk about MSMEs. I think we have to also realize that there are different tiers of business levels and different tiers of engagement that is required. It is not like Dr. Krishna Ryan said, not panacea. You can't treat a micro business the same way you would provide an intervention for a small or a medium, because they are at different levels. And so based on the survey, the findings were very interesting, and I won't go through all of it, but 87% reported various losses since January 2020, and only 10.8% reported being able to continue operating their business if conditions continued under COVID-19, especially with the lockdowns. Of course, there were several job losses, but a key part of the report found that a key intervention that the private sector wanted in Belize was financial support for employment retention, tax relief, which is both business income tax, fuel exemptions, and also tax and investment incentives. So that's some of our findings from the private sector. The other areas were what areas, we asked the private sector, what areas of training would you be looking at? And they had responded that in these times, they wanted more training in e-commerce, internet business development, post-COVID-19 employee skills development, and building an online presence. So again, those were the top areas indicated. Now, in Belize, what the national level had conducted, the government of Belize then provided a response to that. And based on the request from MSMEs, the national program was launched in terms of an MSME support program. This was launched recently in August of 2020, which provided financial relief in the form of loans and grants to MSMEs that were affected. So in terms of the micro enterprises with 2 to 4 employees, they were able to access fixed grants of 2,500 Belize dollars. And then the small and medium size were able to access low interest loans. And these were all channeled through the National Bank of Belize. Now, the funding, of course, were to be used for retaining employees, financing working capital, trainings, or other areas, particularly the implementation of COVID-19 health protocols. And as of September, the end of September, we had 3,994 MSME applicants from all municipalities in Belize, and these were across all sectors. So far we have disbursed 693 micro grants with over 1.7 million, and also other 196 enterprises accessing the loan facility. Now, a key part of the government's MSME support program would not have been possible without local collaboration. And one of the key areas in this is that the information had to be disseminated once Cabinet had approved. Beltrade, again, was the focal point, and we disseminated it nationally. But a key part of our strategy was leveraging our municipal governments as tentacles for the program. And so essentially, we were able to launch the program, we were able to share information, but really the local municipalities acted as that information hub to share the information with local MSMEs, both in Belize City, in different parts of Corozal, the Cayo district as well. So that in itself has shown promise and great employment impact as well as economic impact. Another area is that based on looking at trade, MSME development, and investment, because we focus on those 3 areas, Beltrade has had projects with local municipalities in several areas. So, for example, our SBDC Belize, our Small Business Development Center, we have signed memorandum of cooperations with several municipalities, including San Pedro, San Ignacio, and the Belize City Council, and have informal working relationships with several. Now, the MOCs, or Memorandum of Cooperation that we use, basically what we do is to transfer the methodology that we use in entrepreneurial training to the municipal level. And that has been effective as well in providing that mentorship and coaching to the LED units in the municipalities and the business support officers across the cities and towns in Belize. Now, from the program, as I mentioned, they were acting as tentacles, but some specific projects, and I think Dr. Krishnayaran, you mentioned it in your paper. The SBDC Belize had worked with the Belize City Council in a very specific project. And again, it was mentioned in the CLGF paper, which was the Belize Telemedia Limited Park. And what we had done is there were 17 kiosks there. And through our SBDC, we provided training to 42 applicants that were going to occupy those kiosks. And the trainings were in the areas of business operation management, customer service, marketing, record keeping, and accounting. So those were some of the key areas we focused on. But that again shows that from a parastatal agency, which is like Beltrade, we have been reaching out to different projects that are done at the local level to try to stimulate MSME growth. And I can probably say that, you know, that park, I walk through it all the time. So I'm glad to see a lot of the entrepreneurs still there, still active, and still going strong. Now, another project that the Belize City Council, and I do send their regards, they were not able to join today, but recently the Belize City Council launched an accelerator program under their local economic development unit. The accelerator program, the way it worked is that 20 entrepreneurs had benefited under 2 cohorts, but this program was interesting because it did not just provide a cash transfer or a financial grant or a loan to the MSME. Now, what they did is instead they fostered entrepreneurial growth through the training. The entrepreneurs would have to present a plan and an investment plan, and they were able to access the appliances, equipment, or ingredients needed for their business, equivalent of 800 Belize dollars to 1,200 Belize dollars. That was the range. So instead of getting the cash directly, they were able to, the Belize City Council purchased the asset and shared it with the entrepreneurs in order to stimulate investment and MSME growth. So that is another example. And then lastly, we are working, the Belize City Council is working on a project called Building Sustainable Communities by Maximizing the Use of Public Space. And this project is being worked on in collaboration with the CLGF to rehabilitate 2 playgrounds with small snack shops as well as kiosks for the upkeep of different parks in Belize City. So those are some of the key initiatives. In terms of trade, I know that was a big part of the discussion and the paper as well, but what we find is that there is that need for more value chain analysis and awareness. And so what Beltrade has done under its Export Belize unit in several municipalities is to support value chain analysis. So for example, working with Punta Gorda Town Council, we worked on looking at a cacao value chain analysis for Belize, contacting several stakeholders, and that was done with Duke University in 2018. So this looks at how can we pivot and move on the value chain of cacao development to do different chocolates, different scrubs, and different products. Another area we're looking at in the south is also turmeric and then also seaweed. So those are other clusters that, of course, we have to engage the LEDs. Now, moving into the investment side, which is, of course, my key area of focus, we also look at ways in which we can collaborate better with our municipalities. So under Belize Invest, we have held different roadshows and trainings with our municipal government. And what we have done is shared information on the fiscal incentives program and the designated processing areas program, so that if an investor walks into the municipality, they can share that information as well and refer them to either Beltrade or thereafter to apply for the incentive. And another key area is, for example, we've been looking at ways to look at public-private partnerships a bit closer. One example of this is in Belmopan, which is the capital city of Belize. Belmopan City Council had identified a parcel of land that they wanted to look at developing a hotel and conference facility. but they wanted us at Beltrade to support them in the business feasibility and case study. And so we are working in that regard, and then trying to attract an investor to that location. Now, of course, a key part of that package would also be looking at the LED and local incentives that can be offered by the municipality itself. So those are some of the key areas that we are currently working on. I think in terms of concluding on how can local governments further support business integration into national global value chains, I think, Vijay, you mentioned a key point. Again, greater capacity development is needed. From our perspective in Belize, it's more on the business development and entrepreneurial training, more trade awareness and market access requirements. Oftentimes, MSMEs don't think about market access and standards until very late in the stage of the development, and that is a key area we want to try to work on a bit more. And of course, with COVID-19, as identified in our survey, there is a need for greater e-commerce and digital business training and capacity development. Apart from that, I have here on our list that greater access to finance through grants, loans, and revolving funds, supporting linkages and mentorship through networking initiatives by LEDs, and then of course the development of greater urban mapping and planning, as well as zoning within different local municipalities. Finally, we do have a point about greater PPPs. I think a key point about achieving the SDGs is also partnering with the private sector. So that is some of our insights from Belize so far on the various projects that we're working on. And again, thank you for the invitation to share those insights.
Thank you very much, Hero. Colleagues, we've had two excellent presentations so far from colleagues working on the administration of and making local economic development happen, using either local or national instruments, mechanisms, and institutions. We're going to move now to a perspective, a political perspective, a perspective from the Honourable Edward Registe, Cabinet Minister in Dominica, Member of Parliament for Grand Bay, holding the portfolio of Minister of State in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, International Business and Diaspora Relations. The Minister has specific responsibility for diaspora relations. He served as a local government representative until quite recently. He was the chairman of the Grand Bay Village Council, where he took a lead in convening local stakeholders so that they can engage with an EU-funded project on localizing the Sustainable Development Goals. Honourable Minister, I'll ask you to speak, and I'm taking this moment to give notice to Valerie Grant, the Managing Director of Geotech Vision, who'll give us an entrepreneur's perspective. I'm putting Valerie on notice that she will be the person that I go to first for a response from the private sector with regard to some of the things that we've heard. So I'll also remind participants of the need to use the chat facility to pose any questions that you may have, questions that will have occurred so far, but things that will occur to you having heard the next two speakers. So, Honourable Edward Registe, please.
Good morning to you, Vijay. Good morning to the Minister from Jamaica. I also want to acknowledge the presence of the members of CLGF, the staff of CLGF, and of course, my fellow panelists. This morning, I will focus on a project which was funded by CLGF in my community, the community of Grand Bay, which is a southern rural community of about 3,000 residents. And, I'll try to put into perspective some of the efforts that this project tried to address in helping to develop healthy lifestyles within my community. Now, this project was headed by the Grand Bay Village Council, or rather the Grand Bay Local Authority. And we have a series of councils around Dominica, local government institutions, which are really responsible for giving direction to the various communities. And so in that instance, the Grand Bay Village Council took the lead on this because we focused on the SDG goal number 2, with six sustainable solutions to end hunger in all forms by 2030 and to achieve food security. They aim to ensure that everyone everywhere has enough good quality food to lead a healthy lifestyle. This was really the aim of this project, and the council developed a proposal to encourage residents to take greater responsibility for improving their lifestyles by making healthy choices. Of course, that project, as I said earlier, was funded by CLGF. It was found in a research paper that we did leading up to the project. It was found that hypertension, cancer, diabetes, and obesity were prevalent among the productive sector in the community and was beginning to impact the ability of the community to sustain productivity in certain sectors. The passage, of course, Dominica was affected by Hurricane Maria in 2017, and it devastated the country. Of course, my part of the country was most impacted, the south of Dominica. And so the passage of Hurricane Maria in September of 2017 further compounded the reality, with residents having to depend on imported rations after the storm, and that was due to the scarcity of local produce, and that called into question our ability to sustain food security. And we have taken steps to try to correct that, and that is this project is actually one of the steps that addresses the food security. It was found that imported rations contained increased sodium and therefore could be associated with the sharp increase in hypertensive cases, which were observed at the Grand Bay Hospital in months following the storm. According to one of the local nurses who conducted part of our survey, she noted that the threat to our survival as a community, and by extension the nation, is in many instances a result of our bad choices in diet and lack of exercise. In a sense, this quote from that local nurse from the background against which this project was developed and was successfully executed. So that project was referred to as the Grand Bay Healthy Lifestyle Enhancement Project. And it was not meant to correct all the ills that participants faced. Rather, it was meant to create awareness about the possibilities that exist if residents were willing to embark on a new way of life which could improve their health. Prior to the project, there were various groupings that existed in the community. We had the Grand Bay Diabetes Society, and that society brought together persons who were suffering from diabetes, and they had regular clinics and so forth. So we focused on that group, and we also had another group which was a group of persons living with cancer and cancer survivors, and they are affiliated to the Dominica Cancer Society, and they would have a number of programs that would also focus on their health. So they were important to our survey and important to this project as well. Of course, there are always in many communities, I would imagine in most of our countries, you have a number of people who go out for morning walks and morning runs, but they do this without having a supportive diet to get them to actually live full, healthy lifestyles. Of course, you would find that the need to go out running or taking a morning walk is increased, leading to carnival celebrations. Many people try to get in shape for carnival so that they could fit into their costumes. And that is also something that we observed during our survey. On the other hand, there are several restaurants and bars in my community of Grand Bay, which serves, and these serve a wide variety of fried items. And they do that on a daily basis, and they pay very little attention to healthy foods. These items are affordable and readily available for delivery services, prompting many residents to indulge. There has also been a noticeable move away from traditional cooking and preparation of local products. The abundant use of sugar and gluten flour has dominated local cuisines, and that we found was very unfortunate. The use of sodas and imported juices have replaced fresh fruit juices and local bush teas. Also, they found that out. And natural physical activity, such as bicycle riding or other cycling and backyard gardening, have been replaced by the extensive use of vehicles and white-collar jobs. This has resulted in many of our residents being obese. They really lacked exercise and nutrition, proper nutrition. From a survey conducted, from the very survey that we did, we found that many residents were also ashamed or afraid or fed up to do anything about their health status. So the Healthy Lifestyle Project was then designed by the Grand Bay Village Council to offer a strong support base in the form of a family setting to assist participants to personally confront their challenges and to decide to take action to correct them. The project focused on a few areas: improved nutrition, access to information on healthy choices, and the inclusion of exercise in daily routines. Participants were afforded the opportunity to participate in a series of seminars which focused on nutritional improvement and the impact of certain non-communicable diseases on their lifestyle. So we had to get them to understand that hypertension and diabetes and cancer really impacted in a very serious way. Everybody was afraid of cancer, but many people did not have the very same, they did not place the very same emphasis on diabetes and hypertension. We contacted a number of individuals who were already practicing healthy lifestyle regimes to facilitate some of the sessions. We had a well-known local nutritionist, Ms. Nathalie Charles, known as Sister Nats, who inspired participants to think outside of the box in her ability to use the local products to create high-quality dishes which actually tasted very delicious. The use of beans, for example, to replace cheese was a pleasant surprise for participants. The processing of sweet potato and dashing flour resulted in the production of a new line of pastries, which formed part of a healthier choice. Nutritionist nurse Priscilla Prevo conducted sessions on nutrition to combat non-communicable diseases with special focus on obesity, and participants found that very, very inspiring. And we also had a local doctor, Dr. Andy Sentide, who conducted sessions to focus on the medical response to non-communicable diseases and others targeting men's health in particular, because many of the men in the community were either scared or ashamed of visiting the doctor very often. The women did much better at that, and so we focused a lot on men's health. There were also special sessions on cancer. As I said, we collaborated with the Cancer Society and the Diabetes Society. And we also introduced a CMOS-based immune boosting tonic, which was conducted by another local nutritionist, Mr. Jason Robin. So the second phase of the project introduced participants to new and exciting ways of preparing local food and incorporating them in their diet. There was also an attempt to teach the techniques of making non-gluten flour. So we actually did that, and we got the participants themselves to bake a new line of pastries, as I said earlier on, and they manufactured these non-gluten flours. It was surprising to participants at how these pastries tasted similar to white flour, which was filled with gluten. So can you imagine sweet potato bread or dashing akras or tanya cakes or banana macaroni? I hope you're getting excited. And we also were able to produce plantain and cassava pizzas, and the list goes on. A number of products that were created. We also invited the owners of bars and restaurants to participate in the workshop to learn how to use these new products and to incorporate them in their menus. The products are now being offered by some of these establishments. We've focused on how we can inspire other members of the public who are not part of this project to use these products in their daily diet. We have.
Minister, if I can ask you to draw a conclusion.
What was that?
Can I ask you to draw a conclusion? To finalize? A minute, perhaps?
Yeah, we'll conclude in a minute. Yes. Yes. And then we have a bakery in the community that has devoted its time to using these flours. So what we have found was that many of the participants took on the challenge, and they were able to improve their lifestyle, improve their health. Many who had diabetes were able to come down to manageable standards, as well as diabetes. And even some of our cancer patients were able to see improvements in their health. Now, what we have been able to do is to try to get some of these products to the market beyond just our community. And some of these products are on supermarket shelves. And we are also attempting, in terms of trade, to try and get some of these products to other Caribbean islands, especially the non-gluten flours. You have pumpkin flour, you have sweet potato flour, and others. And people are finding them to be very, very, very good to be used in their local cuisine. And we are trying to promote that. Now, the government has provided some support in helping through loans for small business development projects like this. And we're taking advantage of that to continue to produce some of these products and to create employment for some of our participants. So I welcome this opportunity to discuss this project, because we have to continue to encourage many of our people to live healthy, but we have to provide the mechanisms to encourage them to do so. So I'm very happy for this opportunity, and I want to conclude here.
Thank you very much, Minister. Colleagues, before the Minister started, I said I would go to Valerie Grant, the Managing Director of Geotech Vision, who was the businesswoman of the Commonwealth Businesswoman of the Year at the Malta Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in 2015. Her company specializes in knowledge solutions and provides services to NGOs and corporate entities, and has recently released a product that focuses on addressing the digital divide and bringing young people into the digital space. Valerie, I wonder if you could give us perhaps a response from a private sector perspective on some of the things that you've heard to date.
Thank you very much. All protocols observed. So one of the things that I've been hearing today is just how businesses and the government is looking at this transformation. And so I think COVID-19 has really brought about many years of change. And so to remain competitive from a business perspective, I think the most critical thing for us is that it requires new thinking in terms of strategies and practices. And the biggest one, I think, is the fact that COVID has given us that forced digital transformation. And so for us in the private sector, it's both a challenging and an exciting time because we have the opportunity to do what I like to call have exponential progress, where we can have that big network effect. So I personally have been talking about digital transformation for a very long time, but now it has happened. We are all forced to use the technology. And so the thing is, it is changing businesses forever. The challenge, I believe, though, is how do we leave no one behind, both in terms of businesses and in terms of the students? How do we get students to become good digital citizens so that they too can transition into these jobs that we're now creating for them in this digital era? And so I think it is for us to look at that in that context and to see how we can help students to use technology responsibly, as well as to show businesses how they can use the technology to add value. And as they digitize, how do they recognize the value of the data that they are creating to make good decisions, but also to impact their bottom line? I think what COVID has also taught us in the private sector is the value of good leadership, and how leadership is not about just it has revealed how we lead in a crisis, but it's also about how the workplace is changing. And I think addressing this whole matter of diversity and also thinking about the well-being of our team. So I think the biggest thing is how that digitization and how we can move to digitally enabled products and making sure that we have all of the component parts, because I think that's the only way we can get to that kind of exponential progress that we are clearly in line for because of what has happened in the forced digital transformation. But we have to address the challenges that come with that in order to capitalize on it as we look at both deconstructing and reinventing ourselves to make sure that we remain relevant in this time.
Thank you very much, Valerie, for that on point, very precise perspective that touched on some of the key issues that have been raised. Colleagues, I'm delighted to say that we're getting what started as a trickle of questions has now turned into a flood. So that's excellent. One of the hardest questions is directed at me. Mr. Krishnarayan, can you give us an example of a country in the global south that has effectively produced good examples of local economic development? Well, it depends. Given what I've been saying about the importance of context, it depends very much on the context that you're looking at. It depends on the set of issues and challenges that need to be addressed. But as a rule of thumb, one of the things that the paper identifies is that where there are strong local institutions, you are more likely to get good examples of local economic development. So if you look in the region, if you look at Dominica, for example, fine tradition of local government, some good examples of local economic development have already been surfaced. I think we've heard the same in Belize. If you look in Asia, you look at Sri Lanka, you look in Southern Africa, you can see the same in South Africa itself. So you look for where the strong local institutions are, and there you'll find strong local economic development. There's a question to the Minister about the role of the diaspora in relation to enabling this participation of stakeholders in a broader range of stakeholders in international trade. So, Minister, I'll ask you to say something about that in your comments. I'm afraid we're not going to be able to go back for a back and forth, so I'm really positing these questions for each of the panelists to pick up in some concluding remarks. Hero, there's a question about the employment retention programs that you started to outline in Belize. How do those work in practice? Then There's also a question about how central government can help rural communities to get involved in trade through local economic development. And I guess, Hero, that's something else that you might be able to give us a perspective on, particularly given differing levels of access to technology and telecommunications. I think those are some of the main questions that I'd like to raise. I think, Jumani, if you could also give us some insight on the practical challenges of working at a local level to engage with national and international processes. I think that would be very valuable as well. There's another question here. If local economic development is to deliver and be sustained, what national policy do we need to enhance the capacities of councils for, of local authorities for? So I'm going to ask the panelists to reflect on those questions in making some concluding remarks in the 10 minutes that we have remaining. Minister, if I could start with you, particularly on the role of the diaspora.
Yes, what we have been able to do was to sort of engage the diaspora in what we were doing. So we used technology. So a number of the Dominican diaspora, particularly the Granbarian diaspora in St. Thomas and that is the US Virgin Islands, in New York and so on, they were able to follow the challenge that we gave to our participants, and they were very interested. A number of them had returned home before COVID-19 and were able to sample some of these products that we were producing, and found them to be quite delicious. And many of them were beginning to make plans to have some of these products imported to the countries that they had adopted as their homes. But COVID-19 has brought in some restrictions, and so we are unable to export except to our neighboring French countries of Martinique and Guadeloupe, where we have a very large diaspora community, and they are offering opportunities for trade, and that is helping to sustain our business even now with the COVID-19 environment. But we're hoping that when COVID subsides, that we would be able to export even beyond the region. And these are some things that we need to look at. But in preparing for that, we were able to recognize that there are a number of impediments to trade that we need to actually look at. And especially for small businesses and products manufactured in small communities like ours. There are a number of red tapes that we have to go through, and these are some things that as a Minister of Government I'm trying to begin to address before we are able to actually enter international trade.
Thank you very much, Minister. That's great insight there. Jumani, I wonder, from going from the national, going to the local, what are some of the capacities, Jumani, that are required at the local level to actually engage with trade, actually insert local stakeholders in value chains?
Okay. Can you repeat?
What are some of the capacities that are needed? What are some of the capacities that are needed at a local level to enable participation in global value chains, in national strategies, making the most of international opportunities? What are some of the strategies that are required by local stakeholders, particularly in the micro, small and medium-sized enterprises?
Well, as I made mention before, training is very important. I can mention, even with my municipal corporation, we have also looked at training staff as it relates to even LEDs as well, and also sustainable development goals and alignment of the goals and the national goals as well. So capacity building is very important. It's a bit difficult because it's something new, and even in the training we had that issue, whereas we had to basically use innovative ways in which to interact with the participants as it relates to the local economic development. But in a nutshell, we overcome that early, and it was somewhat difficult in the initial stage, but we are okay with it now.
And what are the tools that you need, Jumani, as a local government official? What are the tools that you need?
Tools as it relates to?
As it relates to enabling local participation in economic activity.
Oh, some of the tools you can look at is actually one, somewhat an agreement, or should I say a MOU with local stakeholders and also the participants. Integrating a lot of precedents, such as example of locations where LED initiatives has worked as well. So we actually had to look at those initiatives as well, because it is just not feasible to just think about Jamaica only, but to see where this has been worked otherwise apart from Jamaica. And I know that on the CLGF site, there were some other examples that we had used, and to basically portray, or should I say, facilitate certain development.
Lovely, thank you. Hero, please. Some questions in particular on national, the position of national agencies in enabling others, but also in particular a question about the employment retention scheme.
Sure, Dr. Krishnaran. So essentially, let me start with the Employment Retention Initiative. Essentially, the Small Business Development Center under Beltrade tracks two different types of indicators. So we not only track capital investment that are boosted in MSMEs, but we also track jobs created and jobs retained. Now, because of that, that is a big part of keeping employment. So we would take a look at MSMEs at the start of a year and at the end of the year to see whether there were any new employment growth, and then to ensure there was that employment that was retained. Now, as I mentioned, the government of Belize did roll out a national MSME support program recently for COVID-19. And I mentioned during my presentation that a part of using the grants and loans was for the retention of employees. The reason for that is, as you know, a lot of small businesses and medium-sized enterprises were furloughing employees or putting them on hold until the economy would pick up. And so basically what the government had done is provided a mechanism for wage subsidies at a fixed amount. And essentially, if an employee was not benefiting from an unemployment relief program, they were able to qualify for wage subsidies under the MSME support program. But the way it would work is that the enterprise would need to apply for the wage subsidy for their specific employees that they would want to retain. So that is some of the ways that we do it. I think KPIs, or key performance indicators, and tracking both jobs created and jobs retained, both at the local and national level, remains key. Now, moving to the second point about how can central government address hinterland or rural communities to get involved in trade. I think a key solution that we have seen in our experience in Belize is cluster development. I think, Vijay, in your paper, you mentioned the example in Myanmar where farmers were able to come together and negotiate better prices. I would say cluster development alongside FDI can also support that, but also local investment. The reason is that, again, we have an example, for example, in southern Belize, where we have seen a cluster of yellow ginger or turmeric farmers now selling to a producer that is producing a product called Truly Turmeric. And that's just an example. But of course, many of these farmers are in the rural areas. And so again, they get to save on transportation costs, negotiate prices better when they come together. The same with seaweed in Belize. Those are some of the areas. But I think another way is just to ensure that the national policies and strategies that are developed by central government are also mainstreamed at the local economic development level, tying each local economic development office to key performance indicators across the various municipalities or districts. So for us, we have a growth and sustainable development strategy. We have a national trade policy, and very soon and coming, we are working on our national investment policy and strategy. So that is being funded by the CDF. So those projects, we have to ensure that the LEDs and also the municipalities are also involved so that they can help mainstream, and also tying them to some of the KPIs that we would like to achieve. So I think that's another way we can work on that.
Lovely, thank you. Valerie, any last thoughts?
No, actually, I just believe that we are presented with so many opportunities at this point in time, and it's just important that it's not going to be solved by government or the private sector alone, but I believe that a collaborative partnership between government and the private sector will set us on the right track to addressing the challenges that we face, as well as the opportunities that are presented.
That's a great note to end on. I'm going to hand over now back to Lucy to take us in through to the conclusion. Lucy?
Thanks very much, Vijay, and thanks very much to all of the panelists for your great contributions. And I think one of the things that came through extremely strongly to me was both the value of both the sort of breadth of experience and the different kind of work that colleagues are working on in terms of local economic development. Very much the point, I think, Valerie, that you just made about the fact that this is something which we really need to be looking at a strong collaborative partnership in order to really be successful. I think that came through also very strongly, Hero, in your comments. But I think also the value of exchanging at the Caribbean level and the different contexts, the different examples, and the different things that we can bring to the table. And, you know, we're really happy to have been able to slightly expand our capacity in the region. So we now have a bigger office, and we're hopefully going to be able to do much more in terms of supporting that Caribbean kind of exchange and learning. So I think that's, you know, very, very positive. I just wanted to sum up with three very, very quick things coming off the back of this event, because in a way I want to see this event starting a dialogue around this issue and looking at starting how we program going forward in the region. So I think the first thing to say is that what we're looking to do next is really draw on the experience of Asia, Africa, and the Caribbean, and think about a Commonwealth-wide exchange with the Commonwealth Secretariat, so with those Commonwealth policymakers, to think about how we get that kind of strategic support in place to really support local economic development and our role in that kind of trade agenda. But also, I think, as local governments, to understand a bit better the framework that the Commonwealth can offer in terms of supporting trade. We know, and Vijay explains in the paper, that there is a dividend in terms of trade within the Commonwealth. And are there ways in which we as local government can really exploit that more effectively for our citizens on the ground? The second thing, which is something which CLGF is working very closely with a number of Commonwealth organizations on, and where I think this sits very nicely, is around trying to engage the Commonwealth to focus more strategically on sustainable urbanization. I know the Minister in his opening remarks talked about rural development and ensuring that local economic development also reaches rural communities. And I think with sustainable urbanization, we're not talking about just the cities, but we're talking about that ecosystem around the cities, those value chains from the rural areas into cities and urban areas. And again, not just the capital cities, but also some of those secondary cities and those smaller communities, how we really link those up and think about that as a whole and contributing to the whole. And we're looking to try and secure a greater focus on that through the Commonwealth Summit, which is coming up next year in June. So that's something that we'd really like to continue to liaise with you on, and to continue to make sure we include local economic development and trade as a core element of that advocacy work. And then perhaps just finally to say that one of the things we're always trying to do as an organization, it will come as no surprise to you to learn, is we're trying to learn. We're trying to do better. We're trying to respond to what our members need. So when we close the webinar in a second, we'll be automatically sending out a short evaluation form for you to kind of tell us a little bit more about how this event went, but also whether you think you'd like to see other things on this kind of thematic area in the future. So it really just calls on me now just to sort of bring everything to a close. Firstly, to thank our keynote speaker, Honourable Minister Mackenzie, and thank you, Minister, for staying with us through this seminar. We look forward to your feedback. To all of our panelists for their excellent contributions and for the diverse perspectives that you brought to the discussion. To VJ, thank you, VJ, for your facilitation, but most importantly for the paper which you presented and so well for us at the beginning of the seminar. And of course, to the whole staff team of CLGF in the Caribbean and based in the UK for their contributions to make this happen. But most importantly, and I think we really need to remember this, to you as participants for your questions, for your attention, and I think for the work that you're doing on the ground to promote local economic development, because we've seen right now, and as Hero said in his closing remarks, now is absolutely a moment for local economic development. And I think we all have an important job, an important role to play in building back better in our local communities. So I thank everybody for your attention. Have a great afternoon. Thank you.